Joining us now, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, MSNBC senior political and national correspondent Jacob Soboroff, who was at the governor's office in downtown Chicago, where Governor Pritzker is about to speak at a news conference, retired four-star general and MSNBC military analyst Barry McCaffrey, and presidential historian and professor of history at Rice University, Douglas Brinkley. Doug, because we started with history, I'm going to begin with you. Talk to me about what the nation was like back in the early 1960s. Why the deployment of the National Guard, the federalizing of the National Guard in Mississippi was necessary in that moment, according to JFK.
Well, it all really began in 1954 with Brown versus Topeka, the Supreme Court decision, which integrated and called for the integration of schools. You see flashpoints in 1957 at Central High School with President Eisenhower having to do the same of sending in National Guards because then Governor Orville Faubus was a segregationist and was refusing to adhere to the Brown decision. And the great clip you just played of President Kennedy, who every time you watch him grows in stature, JFK. But James Meredith was a son of Mississippi. He joined the Air Force after World War II. He was a vet. He quit and he simply wanted to go to school. He thought about going to Jackson State, all-black school, but he decided to go to University of Mississippi and determined he was. He became an icon and a hero for his persistence. But at Oxford became a war zone, not just having to escort Meredith to class, but Molotov cocktails, as you mentioned, people being killed. And in the end, day after day after day, eventually there was calm in Oxford, but the federal troops stayed there for 10 more months because it was like a war zone in Oxford. Eventually, Meredith got his degree at Ole Miss. There's a statue of him at the stadium at University of Mississippi. And last thing, Meredith went on to get a law degree at Columbia, came back to march for freedom and was shot numerous times with bird pellet guns, body just riddled with holes some years later. So the racism in that period in the South was deeply intense.
So I wonder, Jacob, have you seen anything commiserate to that in your reporting? Is it that hot out there right now, so hot because of the tension between maybe ICE enforcement and the protesters, that the only way to cool it off would be to send in the National Guard?
That's not what local elected officials say in any of the places that we have seen, and certainly that I have been reporting on the ground, particularly in Los Angeles. In the early nights in Los Angeles, the use of force by the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department that preceded the deployment of the National Guard under Title 10 of U.S. Code by Donald Trump was about a small gathering because of the deployment of the federal immigration enforcement agents to carry out the stated goal of the largest mass deportation campaign in the history of the United States of America. And we are seeing echoes of those types of protests, but not some kind of wide-scale citywide violence like you would believe to be happening if you listen to what was happening and being said from the White House and certainly by the president himself, the likes of Stephen Miller, Border Czar Tom Homan, who was on the ground in Los Angeles, but we haven't seen here. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was here last week, and there have been flashpoints where I was talking to you from earlier today as we await Governor Pritzker's news conference here on the day that he has sued the federal government over the potential deployment of the National Guard here to Chicago. That facility, the Broadview facility, the neighborhood where the apartment building was raided, there was certainly a clash between law enforcement and the local citizens here. But that was something that the law enforcement themselves initiated by raiding that building in the overnight hours. Same can be said about the enforcement operation that led to the clash, that led to the shooting of the woman who we've been reporting on here today in Chicago. But again, nothing as you drive around Chicago. I'm in the middle of downtown Chicago in the governor's office right now as we wait to hear beyond this lawsuit what he has to say, both to President Trump and about whether or not the state and the city will do any kind of cooperation whatsoever. The mayor, I should note, signed an executive order today saying that they're basically ICE-free zones in Chicago at all city property, not to be used for these immigration enforcement activities. The bottom line is Local officials do not want this federal presence here. They certainly don't want a military presence on the ground, and they continue to say that over and over. That's, I think, what we're going to hear from Governor Pritzker here in just a couple of minutes as we await him here in downtown Chicago, Katie.
So, General McCaffrey, I'm hoping you can help me just try to poke into this a little bit further. You know, I wasn't alive in 1962, so I can't speak to how it felt down there in Mississippi or how the country felt. But I was alive in the 90s, and I can tell you how it felt in Los Angeles during the LA riots. And it was scary in Los Angeles. I mean, it was not the entire city. It's a giant city. But there were broad swaths of the city that were lawless and scary. I mean, my dad famously said on camera, it's like the LAPD had abandoned the city of Los Angeles during the riots. He and my mother were over there, over above it, covering the riots as it was happening. Are you seeing anything? Do you have any sympathy for the deployment of the National Guard? Anything that would require the National Guard to come in and assist law enforcement? I mean, we saw a video a few minutes ago of somebody ramming their car into an ICE vehicle. Is that an example of something being a little bit too hot to need the National Guard?
Well, look, there is no insurrection. The cities aren't burning. This is all nonsense. This is a political drama being played out by President Trump. The National Guard is a treasured institution of the country, 430,000 strong. They're our friends and neighbors. They're present at every humanitarian disaster. They are incapable of effectively serving as community law enforcement. So a lot of this is nonsense. We're also missing the point when you look at TV and you're looking at camouflage fatigue wearing law enforcement, body armor, helmets, armored vehicles, M4 carbines, rappelling onto roofs. You're seeing a federal police force taking over what should be state and local law enforcement. We're in a very dangerous period for our time. We do not want the U.S. Armed Forces, National Guard, or federal troops on American city streets trying to enforce the law. They're not very good at it. The bigger question, by the way, has to be asked, who said in the Congress or the voters that we wanted to take 12 million people, deport them from the country, crash the agricultural system, construction, services? Who gave federal law enforcement that authority? Has that been funded by Congress? That's the major question that needs to be addressed by the court system and by Congress.
Lisa, the court system has so far pushed back on Donald Trump's effort to send in the National Guard in many places, including in Oregon. Can't send in the National Guard from Oregon, can't send in the California National Guard, not the Texas National Guard, can't do it. The facts on the ground don't justify it, according to the federal judge out there. When asked about this, Stephen Miller said that there were alternate plans. There were alternate authorities the president have. What do you take that to mean?
I mean, I think the first place that my mind goes is to the Insurrection Act. You were showing that historical footage of President Kennedy when he sent the National Guard to Mississippi and then to Alabama in the 1960s. He did so under the authority of the Insurrection Act, not using Title X, which is the authority that President Trump has relied on now. So far, President Trump has not invoked the Insurrection Act, which is the exception to the Posse Comitatus Act.